lay the foundation on which we build. It is very important that we take the time to do that, because there's nothing that we are doing in the here and now that somebody has not done before us in some kind of configuration. However, it does behoove us to be cognizant of that history so that we can learn lessons and we can move further along the journey and make sure that we're laying a good foundation for those who are coming after us. So as we go through this program tonight, I want you to think about all of our ancestors, all of our revolutionary ancestors who were not afraid to seek truth, were not afraid to speak truth, were not afraid to walk in alignment with that truth. And it takes a certain amount of courage to not only have information, but walk in alignment. It's one thing to have a word, but it's another thing to line up your actions with those words and make progress. I also want to acknowledge that in this space, we're going to be talking about a subject matter that's uncomfortable for some people. It causes some things on the inside, but that's why we want to have this sacred space. And these kind of conversations have been happening over the last couple of months, built on the decades and centuries this conversation has been had. We want to acknowledge that tonight. And we also want to be very transparent about three things. Many of the members in this room are organizers with Take Them Down NOLA. Some of you are here tonight because you might have been pulled into the conversation as a result of the rumblings within the city. But we don't have anything to hide. We want to talk, and we want to share, and we want you to ask the questions that you need answers to so that we can engage in that dialogue and be very transparent about why this conversation, why now, why this way, all the whys. We're happy to engage in that conversation. And we also want to say that there are certain parts of the conversation, truth be told, that are for Black people to have. There are certain parts of the conversation that white people need to have. And there are certain parts of the conversation that Black people need to have with Black people, white people need to have with white people. We're always transparent about that. We have white folks in the room, and I'm here to say, and I'm setting the tone, everybody has to move at your comfort level. As organizers Take Them Down NOLA, we don't mince words when we're in the presence of white people. And we expect that they understand that if there's anybody here who is in the room that's white, you need not be offended by the conversation that's going to be had tonight, because it's going to be had. And we need white folks to be very confident in yourselves when you are in the presence of a room with other white people. You need to have some courage, not to have a conversation about what Black people need to have, but to have a conversation with other white people who you know are beyond compromising with white supremacy, but perpetuating white supremacy in ways that need to be contended with. And we have those conversations very transparently. So tonight what's going to happen is we're going to start off by watching a 10-minute video clip, and we're going to ask everybody to just be very present with the video clip and listen to the words. Think about questions that even come up in your mind. When the video clip is over, we're going to ask Ms. Antoinette Scott, organizer extraordinaire. She's going to share some words tonight with us that are on her heart. And then we're also going to ask a longtime revolutionary organizer, Malcolm Suber, to say some words. When Malcolm is done saying words, what we're going to actually do is engage in a conversation here tonight. This is not a lecture time. What we're really curious about are the kinds of questions or wonderings that people have. Some of the questions might be about blackface, but I would hope that when you leave this room tonight, you understand that the conversation's about blackface, but it's not only and just about blackface. We need to understand that, because when we do the blackface, there's a whole bunch of layers up under that blackface. And those are the things that people really sometimes don't want to talk about, but we're going to talk about it. And we don't want you to leave here with questions, because some of the questions might be about blackface. Some of the questions might be about local engagement here in New Orleans. Some questions might be about, like, what was the conversation like between Take Them Down NOLA and Zulu? If you want to, listen, we don't have nothing to hide. And we are very, very much open in letting you know that this conversation is just one of many, because it will be happening throughout the year. It's already been happening even before tonight. So with that being said, I'm going to ask us if we can just watch the video. We'll go into comment by Antoinette Malcolm, and then we're going to engage in discussion. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, and I promise you we won't keep you here all day, right? Are we doing the watch? Oh, yeah. Thank you.
The happy slave, the bungling simpleton, the dangerous predator. Racist stereotypes of African Americans came in all shapes and sizes and in vivid color. Newly developed mass printing techniques meant that an unprecedented number of demeaning images of black people could saturate American popular culture.
The architects of Jim Crow used popular culture and in cartoons all over magazines. You had large-lipped, blackface, near human beings portrayed in every kind. Sometimes they were portrayed as animals.
Advertising images were circulated in popular media outside of the black community that showed demeaning images of the black body as undesirable.
So if you want to sell soap, you want to be a clean white person. You don't want to be like these dim-witted Africans as they're arguing in these stereotypes. Then you want to buy these specific brands.
It was a popular cultural use of and denigration in 1,000 ways of the humanity of black people.
This era is called the Jim Crow era, and we think of that in terms of an era of racial segregation legally. But the name Jim Crow actually comes from the most popular blackface character in the 19th century.
Many racist stereotypes of African Americans had their roots in the minstrel show. Minstrelsy was the most popular form of entertainment in America throughout the 19th century. White actors blackened their faces with burnt cork and performed skits that mocked and demeaned black people. Minstrelsy's popularity only increased in the 20th century.
Minstrelsy is the beginnings of the American popular culture, American media, I would argue, and it's rooted in a performance tradition in which whites perform as their idea of blacks. They blacken their faces, they exaggerate black features, and they fetishize how they think black people talk.
Well, why don't you get a job and go to work? No, they had me a job this morning. Where? I went down to the post office and had that man could he let me have one of them jobs as a letter to him. No, God, you mean a mail carrier? When the man said, well, to give me a situation, he had to put me through a civil service examination. No, stupid. You mean a civil service examination? How would you like to go to work for me? Yeah, ma'am. How much you gonna pay me, I hope? Well, let's see now. I'll pay you all your work. No, ma'am. I gotta have some money. Now, all I want you to do is meet Mrs. Zoo in the morning at 9 o'clock. Yeah, with the rest of the month. With the rest of the month. Yeah, I'll bring my grandpa with me.
Minstrelsy ultimately argues that blacks are stupid,
Them down 3 or 21.
that they're not worthy of citizenship, that they can't be citizens,
And there's a 2. Now, can I have
that they are rapacious and they're greedy. One of the reasons minstrelsy featured the exaggeration of black lips was not just because whites thought blacks had bigger lips, but because they thought blacks had overwhelming appetites. Their mouths were exaggerated. Their eyes were so curious they had no room for logic and tempered moods. They were out of control. Minstrel shows had multiple stock characters. The mammy figure, the zip coon dandy, the Sambo. But then there's also Jim Crow. Jim Crow figure was the plantation darky, the stupid one, the bumbling one.
One thing that's important about these characters when they switch to amateur form and blackface is being performed in schools, being performed by politicians, being performed in churches. You now have everyday Americans who are reading these books, buying this sheet music, and they're learning dialect. The majority of these shows are used as fundraisers, often for the Democratic Party, And so there's a direct link between these blackface shows and Jim Crow politics.
Woodrow Wilson would firmly establish his reputation as an unreconstructed Southerner after he hosted the screening of a film at the White House during the winter of 1915. That infamous picture was titled The Birth of a Nation, directed by D.W. Griffith. The 3-hour saga, fictionalizing the history of the Civil War and Reconstruction, was a pioneering artistic achievement in the history of cinema, but it was also a monumentally racist piece of lost cause propaganda. It sought to transform the Ku Klux Klan from terrorists into heroic vigilantes, protecting the country from the perils of racial equality.
Birth of a Nation marked not only the arrival of a new medium of communication, and that being cinema, but the way that that new medium could be deployed to further the old biases of American society. And African Americans immediately recognize what the dangers are implicit in this. It's not coincidental that there's a scene in which there's a young white woman who is being pursued by this rapacious black man, it's actually a black actor in blackface, and she hurls herself off of a cliff rather than be so defiled. This was meant to strike directly at a peculiar part of the psychology of white men of the South and beyond, and them understanding that their fundamental role in life was the protection and preservation of white womanhood from black people.
The Birth of a Nation really is this amazing, big, gigantic, epic film that fixes a certain story of the Civil War and Reconstruction in the minds of the American public. And that story is that black people were too lazy and ignorant to fully master the citizenship that they were offered by Reconstruction.
There's a series of scenes in Birth of a Nation that are supposed to be taking place in the South Carolina legislature during Reconstruction. There's a title card that says this is a facsimile of something that really happened. And then it shows black legislators doing all of these things that are kind of desecrating any kind of dignified political process. They put their feet on the desks, they're eating fried chicken, they're swigging out of a flask. It's, to me, one of the absolute worst of the many horrible scenes in Birth of a Nation because it's denigrating everything to do with African Americans' entry into politics. And it's reinforcing this idea that the entire Reconstruction experiment was a disaster, was a mistake, and the reality is, of course, that was not how it was.
The initial reception is rapturous. The film is shown to sold-out audiences, not simply in the South, but around the country, and in major northern cities. The film, not surprisingly, spawns a rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan, which had actually died out in the 19th century, and they adopt the burning cross as part of their iconography. Prior to this, the Ku Klux Klan had no such ritual.
You can get a sense of the impact of Birth of a Nation by seeing how strongly the NAACP opposed it. They picketed.
There's a widespread sense of outrage about Birth of a Nation, particularly with respect to the screening of it at the White House. There were numerous op-eds written against it. There is a clear sense that Wilson's animus towards people of color was firmly established in that moment.
But it's a losing battle to try to say this isn't what happened. Because production is so fabulous for the times. People had never seen film like this. The white audience loves it. This must be the true story because I see it on the screen.
Why on earth would a black performer put on blackface and demean him or herself?
Look, this is the 19th century. They had limited options. They were expected to.
Why?
Because it made the audiences comfortable. Feel feeling at ease, that combination of the thrill you get when something is very exotic and distant, and against this backdrop of constant debates about black people, their place in society. Are they human? Are they not human? Do they deserve rights? Do they not? And here are these strange, here is this, in some way, erasing of individuality. Look on the stage. Here are these characters who are somewhere between types, stereotypes, and caricatures. You can be fascinated, you can be excited, but you can always feel superior. It doesn't have to disturb, your comfort zone or make you start thinking, well, gee, I really do need to think about, anti-slavery. That's not what this is about. Also, a lot of the shows, it contained very sentimental songs about slave times and being back on the old plantation. And when Negroes, the performers, went to the city, they were often, showed in very buffoonish circumstances. They were shallow dandies, or they were countrified buffoons who really didn't know how to make their way, or they were witches, either kind of absurdly seductive women or big Aunt Jemima types, all played for the early part of the century by men.
Did the makeup dehumanize them? Did it put up a wall and make them less than people?
I think it made them types, and that is, in a way, making them less than people. A type can be, in theater, very grand. The type of the tragic hero or heroine, for example, but a type that is a stereotype is always a collection of what people are considering the lowliest and simplest and, most easy to look down on traits.
The notion that blackface made white audiences comfortable.
And excited.
Really? Comfortable in what way? They weren't comfortable having someone on a stage above them, looking down on them, being held up on a pedestal.
They were not comfortable with watching. They would never have been comfortable, and were not, with watching black actors play, let us say, serious roles. You know perfectly well why. Because America was very racist. Of course they weren't. Slavery was all about creating visions, types, stereotypes of an entire race of people as subhuman in every way.
As I said before, the Jim Crow could not have worked without violence. And that violence was real and potential. Here's a case where we have a real act of violence, but it's also reproduced and so becomes a threat of violence. What you see here is a postcard. So not only was the person beaten, but it became an image, a part of an object, an everyday object that would have been sent through the mail system. Blacks have been targets in games, in toys, and also in real life. Games like African Dodger, where a black person stuck their head through a hole, and we tried to recreate that here, and people would throw balls at their faces. That brutality was replaced, some would say, by a less brutal form, meaning to use not real black people, but wooden blacks and plastic blacks and paper blacks. But of course, symbolically, the idea is still there, that blacks don't experience pain in the same way that whites do, that it's fun to throw at black people, that it is normative to punish them, and that the punishment of them can be public and can be fun for the punisher.
really heavy. Really heavy, and the first time I watched this, I had visceral reactions. I had feelings within my body. And I didn't